Well, hey, everybody, it's Pastor Martin, and we are talking ministry today. And I've always, sometimes we have a little technical difficulties going on. You practice everything and get everything right just before you go on, and then when you go on, it starts to act in some kind of way. But just grateful to have you with us on today as we're talking ministry. Let me, first of all, say thank you to each and every one of you that have reached out to me. Heard from so many of you as we are doing these broadcasts and doing our telecasts as we're talking ministry each and every week. And I'm so grateful to have you with me as we come together. Today, I want to just deal with this particular broadcast today, and I pray that it will be a blessing to those of you that will watch, especially those of you that are dealing with churches and ministries, and you're starting ministry. Maybe you have a ministry and you've been working it for a while, and things have been happening, and all of those type of things. And so today we want to just sort of talk about ministry today and share with you about some things concerning ministry. I'm doing just a few quick maintenance things and putting some things in order, and then we're going to plunge right into it. I hate to do this, but because we had a little technical difficulty today with this, it is what computers do, and sometimes you have to come in and deal with them a different way. And so let me do this, and we're going to get right into today's live. All right, thank you so much. All right, today we want to talk about, I'm going to be talking about today, should small churches merge? Why and why not? We want to have that discussion because, so many today are starting churches. There are churches that are starting up, and you hear this conversation quite a bit when people see live streams or when they see pictures of a church that may seem like there's not many people in attendance there. Sometimes you may see 50, you may see 25, you may see 100. Sometimes you may see less than that. And people always ask the question, should they merge? Should these churches merge with another church to make it a bigger church? And so this question has been passed around quite often. I saw it even last week on Facebook and different places where it was talked about whether the church should do that or not, merge. And so today I want to just let's talk about it. Let's deal with it a little bit today and talk about whether they should merge or not, or just give you my thoughts. Now, everybody's thoughts on this may be different. There may not be, we may not have the same thoughts, and that's okay. It's not an issue. I just say that if we don't have the same thoughts, we can agree to disagree. Let's just keep it respectful, but let's talk about it and just look at from a lot of different perspectives and angles and see about when we're dealing with the small church. First of all, I don't believe that when you're dealing with something small that we should despise it. The Bible talks about despise not the day of small beginnings. And I believe that most people that have started in ministry, no matter where they are today, if they will be honest, they would tell you that sometimes they started on a small scale, and as time went on, they maybe got to where they are today. Their ministry has progressed, their ministry has come up, and so they're where they are today because of endurance or because of being persistent in what they were doing. And so we're not here to in any ways down a small church, a small ministry. We're not here to down a big church or a mega church. That's not the purpose of this particular Let's Talk ministry. We want to just ask that question, should we or should they merge? Because there's a lot of things I think we have to look at before we get to that. One of the things that sort of prompted me to talk about this and have this discussion is last week I received a call from a pastor that's pastoring the church, and he said he know the Lord called him to do it, and he's been pastoring this church, and he began to talk to me and explain to me some of the things that were happening in his church and some of the things that was going on. And I began to say to him that welcome to the club. A lot of these things happen in all of our churches, all of our ministries, whether they're a mega church, whether they're a small church, it happens everywhere. Sometimes you just don't know about it or you just don't hear about it. But there are things that happen all across the board. And sometimes when you go to church growth conferences or pastors conferences, they may share those things with you. Sometimes they may not. They'll just share with you the success of their ministry and how successful they've been, but they won't sometimes share with you the actual things of what it took for them to get where they are, or some of the struggles they had to get where they are. And so they don't share those things all the time. So because they don't, sometimes we look at just the success and we don't understand that there was a struggle sometimes to get to a certain point. And because that's not shared, we are trying to duplicate success without understanding that there was also struggle. I want you to remember that. Sometimes we're trying to duplicate success without also remembering that there was also struggle. And so when you start dealing with that and understanding that, many times we have to know that everyone has that story or that testimony, but that song is correct. There's a story behind my praise. I would also say there's a story behind your success. And if you be honest and transparent and tell about that story and that struggle, then it's going to make a difference. So the question is should small churches merge? Let me first of all say this. Before we get to the discussion of just going about the merging discussion, let's get also to the discussion about the calling, because I think that this is more important than the question about the merge. Because a lot of times we want to have a discussion about merger when we have not had the discussion about the call. What do you mean the call, Pastor Martin? A lot of times we want to talk about merging the church and merging ministries when we have not dealt with the call. And that is whether a person was called or not to ministry as far as pastoral ministry. Because you are called does not mean that you're called to pastoral ministry. Because we are ordained, because we're called, because we felt the call of God, it does not mean that we're called to pastoral ministry. That's why the Bible talks about the 5 gifts. You have pastor, evangelist, prophet, apostle, and teacher. You may be called to something else. It does not necessarily mean that you're called to pastor a church. And so before we talk about merging churches, putting them together, we've got to deal with, are we called to do it first of all? And I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I think that this is so important that we understand that we must recognize what is the real calling that God has called us for. Because if you're doing something that you're not called for, then you're already going to have struggle as it is. But if you're doing something that you're not called for, then next thing you know, you got problems because you were never called to do that in the first place. So before we talk about the merger, before we have the discussion on the merger, let's have the discussion about the call. Then let's have the discussion about our motives. If you are at a church, no matter what size it is, do you first of all have the calling to be the pastor? Then are you doing it with the right motives? Are your motives right? When you started the church, when you opened the church, did you have the right motives in mind? Were you thinking about the call of God on your life, or were you thinking about this is going to be good? I get to preach every week. I get some members, and I get an anniversary. I get a whatever appreciation. I get this. What is your motives for what you're doing? God says, I'll give you pastors after my own heart. So what is your motive, first of all, for what you're doing? Is your motives right? Do you have the right motives? Is the call of God weighing on you as far as it relates to what you're doing? And these are things that we have to discuss first before we talk about a merger. Because if we don't need to merge if we haven't been called. Then we don't need to merge and do things, and we've got the wrong motives while we're doing it. So let's talk about some of these things. Let's talk about them. And I see your comments, and I'm gonna get back to them in a minute. And let's deal with this. So the thing that we got to deal with first is to see if we're called of God. If you're not called to pastor, believe me, you're going to end up with some issues. So I'm going to come back to this because I believe that this is really the root of the discussion, of the question, should I say. It's not so much of whether you should merge, but it's the fact of whether you're even called to do it in the first place, and then if your motives are right. If your motives are right, then you're going to do what's right. There are businesses that merge, and they merge for the thing of making money. But then you've got hospitals that are big, and then you've got these other things that have popped up in the last 10 years called urgent care. Now, what you'll find is that if you've got a serious thing, they send you to the hospital. But if you've got a matter that can be done there in the urgent care, they send you to there. So when I look at churches sometimes, I look at maybe a mega church as the big hospital, and I look at maybe a smaller church as the urgent care. Because what we have to understand, and that is that everybody does not want to go to a big church. Everyone does not want to go to a mega ministry. So you can't fault people if they don't want to do that. There's some people that go to W Mart, and you know what I say, W Mart, they go there. But there's some people, you talk to them, they'll tell you, I don't go to that store at all. I can't stand it. I don't go in there. They don't like the customer service. They don't care how good the prices are. They're not going. They will go to another store that's smaller than that store. They will go to another store that's very small or whatever, and they will go there and do things at that particular store. They don't even worry about, they're not even concerned or worrying about going to, W Mart. So you got to understand that. So when we start recognizing that and realizing that, we start understanding that people have a preference many times of where they want to go and where they want to be. We sort of believe that it's wherever we want to be or where we want to go or whatever we want them to go, and it's not always the case. People have a choice. They have a preference many times of where they want to go and where they want to be. And so I want to really put that out there because I need you to understand that people do have a preference. They know where they want to go. And the same way if they want to go to the urgent care or to the hospital, same way if they want to go to the big store or the small store, they do that. Sometimes they're not led to go to the mega ministry. And I'm not fighting the mega ministry by no means, but I'm just stating the fact that everyone does not like going to a large church. Sometimes they like going to a smaller church. And so what happens is we've got to discuss this thing concerning the calling and knowing that everyone does not want to go. People know where they want to attend, whether it's small, whether it's big or large. And so the real question again is, did God call us in the first place? Because here's an issue that I think that I want to deal with, and I want to get your thoughts on it, and I'm just coming straight at you on this. I think one of the problems that we have is because if we were not called to pastor, and then if our motives were wrong and we just started a church, whether you started a church because you left a church and split that church, or whether you started a church because the pastor didn't let you do what you want to do, and so you figure, I'm just going to go out and start my own church, and so you pulled some people out of that church and worked undercover and pulled members out of that church and started you a church out of someone else's church, and now you've got this church, and it may be growing, it may be thriving or whatever, and so you feel that way. But here's the issue that I want to talk about and bring on to this discussion, and let's talk about it, and that is starting churches and then leaving them and abandoning the members, abandoning churches that you started, even though we said God called us to pastor. Now, if he called you to pastor, indeed, you heard from God and he really called you to pastor, then why? We need to understand, why did you abandon that church? You started that church 2 years ago, and when you went there, people came with you, whether they heard about your ministry or whatever. They came to that church. When they got to the church, you set up everything, you organize, you start raising money, you start receiving tithes and offerings, you start saying the Lord's going to bless us, you start laying out the vision of what the church was going to do and where the church was going, and all of that, whether you started in a hotel, whether you started in whether you started in somebody's home or whatever, you start up the ministry. You told and you said, we did, that God called us to do that, so we are supposed to be in ministry. So we plunged in to do ministry. All right, so here we go. So we're doing ministry, and then we went to some church growth conferences, and we watched some others, and we went in and looked at their layout, their plan, their vision. We looked at what they're doing, and so we came back to our church. We implemented some of the things that we heard, and we started working, but we didn't see the growth that they had, because sometimes they didn't tell you that, yeah, they grew, but they didn't grow. They didn't tell you that they grew, but they didn't grow. What do you mean? I see you, Pastor Gatlin. What do you mean they grew, but they didn't grow? Because you didn't grow by member transfer. If you're really growing, you should grow with new members and people that have never been to anybody's church or ministry by winning souls. So church transfer and those coming from another church, we could consider it growth, but then again, it may not be growth. So here we go again. Let's look at this, because a lot of times we got in there, and so it wasn't growing like we thought it should. We didn't believe it was growing. So what happened is we just decided to pack up. We decided to just pack up and move and just leave it where it was. And it wasn't so bad even with leaving, but we didn't leave anybody even there that could carry on in that area, because people had put their monies into it. They had sacrificed, given so we can do stuff. They went out and got money from their relatives so we can get chairs and everything else. And then because it was not working for us, we decided to pack up and leave. And we abandoned that church and left the people there with nothing. Now, if you are in a place and a leader move you to another place, that's different. And that means he has a responsibility to fill the pulpit of that other location. And some people, they have done that and they've kept both locations. They may have 3 locations or 4 locations. I don't know. But what I'm saying is what I'm really referring to is people that it's a habit where they start churches and abandon churches just like that. They start them and abandon them because they're not getting what they want out of it. And there's no stability in them starting. And so the people that start seeing churches pop up, they start saying, I'm going to wait. And I heard people say this: I'm not going to a new ministry. I'm going to someone that's already established, because I don't want to get fooled and tricked in going to a new ministry where they don't stay. They don't hang with it. They don't stick with it. And so that's really one of the problems that we have, that we've got to really look at and discuss, is the abandonment of ministries and churches. We got to look at it. It's an abandonment. People, I mean, they'll start a church in Atlanta, and they come in sometimes wrong. They started the church in Atlanta, then they left. They stayed here 6 months, a year, and when it didn't work out, then they went to, they decided they're going to go to Mississippi and start. And then when that didn't work out, but notice along the way, they've raised money. They've left people that have sacrificed, paid, given their tithes, their offerings, paid their money, given sacrificially, and went out and did stuff, sold dinners and everything, because they believed that we were going to stay and be stable. They believed that was going to be their place, that they were going to be able to grow spiritually. And it didn't happen because we abandoned. So we've got to deal with our motives and our callings, because if God called you to do something, My question is not whether you're going to merge. My question is, how can you abandon that thing so quickly? How can you abandon something that quick and do that so quickly? I mean, how can you do that? Let me. I mean, yeah. How can you do that? How can you do that? And we got to be honest about it. I see, I hear you. Yes, most church growth is from transferring from another church. That's true. Um, and did we define what a small church is? You're right. And the time frame. You look to merge or to close the church. We got to understand. You know, I think that we put this pressure on people by terms that we use. The fastest growing church in Atlanta, the fastest growing church in America, or whatever. And let me tell you something, and I want you to hold to your seat because this is not going to be something you want to hear. It's not going to be, it'll be pleasant, but it won't be what you want to hear when you talk about small and big. Because in everything, there's something called small and big. In franchise, they're small and big. In basketball, in football, they've got those that are bigger franchise than another. But now understand, if you start really looking at numbers to compare the success of a thing, then we have to understand that all of us, every one of us, whether you got 10 members or whether you got 50,000 members, and I don't know anybody that's got 50,000 here in America. They may, I don't know. I mean, y'all can help me out. It's possible. But here's the thing. All of us, if that's the case, got storefronts. Okay. Hope I didn't lose you. I said all of us, if that's the case, got storefronts. Because when we look at a football game, college, pro, and these people that fill up stadiums, and the stadium seats 86,000 people, and sometimes it's packed to capacity with 86,000 people, not only 86,000, but other people viewing online and viewing on the TV. If we're going to deal with numbers, then all of us got storefronts. Because if you compare the numbers we have in church, if you compare the numbers we have in church to, let's think about this, compare the numbers we have in our services, no matter, I'm talking about from the biggest to the smallest. If you compare the numbers we have in our church compared to the areas that we're in, then we really got not even a tithe, or we got a small percentage. Think about it. Atlanta probably has, I don't know, Atlanta probably has 3 or 4 million people or something like that. And when you look at Atlanta, if you got a church and it seats 20,000 people or whatever, let's say you got 15,000 members, 10,000 members, that's a small percentage compared to what the people in the whole metropolitan Atlanta area. That's a very small percentage when you deal with that. That's a very low number. And so we got really sort of the drop in the bucket of what is the areas that we're in. And so when you start talking about the small church and they don't have any members, listen, understand, if a person got 50 members, you got to understand it's more about the calling many times than about the numbers. And everyone wants to grow. Everyone wants to have numbers. Everyone, because that's where the church world and has put us at today. The church world has said, I need you to have numbers to show that you're progressive, to show that you got something going, to show that you're great. So the church world wants us to have numbers. And so we're striving for numbers. But let me say something else to you. And that is most of some of your top evangelists today that are pastors. And I could call their names, but I won't do it because I don't want y'all to go through no changes. But some of your top evangelists today that you can go online right now and look at, they're preaching at everybody's convocation, conferences. They're preaching they're preaching all the time. Almost every other flyer, their picture is on it. And they're pastors. And many times they got people that they are watching their church. But if you go and follow them to their church, you will find that they're preaching to thousands on the road, thousands in convocations, thousands in revival. But at their local church, where they pastor, they may be only preaching to 150, if that many. And we think they're great. They're great at evangelism and being evangelists. But where they pastor, most times what they do in revival has not spilled over into their local congregation. And so the question is, if that's the case, should they merge? Or should they just give up the church altogether? Lord, I can't get nobody to help me on here. Come on now, let's deal with this. I mean, think about it. If that's the case, I mean wonders around the world, but their church is not even big. If you would go there, you'd be like, oh man, I thought it was bigger than this. Now I don't have a large church, but I preach all over the place. But my church is not big. We expanded it and opened it up. But I'm just saying to you, before you go through any changes about this thing about merger and all these things, understand that you got to deal with your calling more than your number, because a lot of times we're making people feel bad because they don't carry these great numbers. But here's another thing I want to bring to your attention with a small church and a large church, whatever size it is. It's more important to understand that if we are not ministering to people and people life being changed and things happening, the size of your church really don't matter. If no lives are being changed, people's destiny is not being determined and changed, people are not being saved, then none of that stuff we're talking about means anything, whether it's large or small. There are people that come, their lives and people that come. I've had people that come to my church. I don't have the biggest church in the world, but when they come, I had people to come and say to me, Pastor Martin, today's message changed my life. I was preaching Sunday, and the young lady came. She said, I got up this morning and I prayed and I asked God, where should I go today? And the Lord told me to come to your church, told me to come to Restoration today. And said, I said, Lord, I wasn't going to go to my church. She said, but the Lord said, go to your church. She said, I came here and that word that you gave today was just for me. Somebody else that was visiting our church said, God told me to get up this morning and come to your service today. So understand, why would, and I'm talking about me now, why would I merge something with somebody else when I'm fulfilling my calling where I am? Why should I even let you talk me into that? You know, when I'm doing what he's called me to do. And so my point is, as long as people are coming and being touched, delivered, lives are being changed. A young lady the other week was watching us online and said, I want to rededicate my life. She rededicated her life by watching our broadcast, our live stream straight from our church. So why should I do something to try to make people feel better by me? I'm just talking about me now, merging with somebody else's church. And if they want to come in, that's fine. But why would I merge with somebody else's church and miss my calling, what I know he's called me to do? Now, if I wasn't sure that he called me to do this, then I wouldn't have no problem. I wouldn't merge anything. I walk away from it. Why would I merge something? I just walk away and go find me somewhere else to go or something else to do. So these are the things that we need to talk about when we talk about merging. Why and why not? It's a difficult thing. We got to understand and just understand. And I see you. We got to deal with the area. I hear you, Pastor Gatlin. If you're in a town with 1,200 people, is it even worth? Is it in it? You won't have 3,000 people. You're right. I'm sorry, reading. If you got 1,200 people in that city, you're not gonna have no mega ministry unless people are driving in. And then you got churches everywhere. And like I said again, people go where they want to go. Some people, you'll be surprised. Some people would tell you, I don't want to go to a big church. And I'm not fighting big churches. So don't y'all going through no changes. I preach at big churches, so I don't have no issue with that. But some people say, I don't want to go to big church because I don't want to get lost in there. I want to go where the pastor knows my name. I want to go where the pastor can shake my hand. Now, listen, let me give you another truth so you'll understand, even with this church thing, that a lot of churches, mega churches and small churches, are feeling something going on right now. There's a shift going on in church. And there's something going on where the Bible talked about there will be a great falling away. And there's a shift going on. There's a shift going on in all of our churches. And sometimes you can't tell it sometimes in a bigger church or a medium-sized church, because sometimes you got people that visit. But now everyone can tell a shift in their Tuesday worship, their Tuesday night Bible study or service, or Wednesday night. They can feel the shift in their revivals. And most people are going to a lot of conferences today. We've got more conferences. There's a conference going on every week. You can be at a conference every week. But the local church is feeling the crunch, because what happens is you can build. I started with 8 members and we built up. And then we had a thing where somebody came in and came in to split the church. So, you have those church splits. And then you have those that come, and then you got to look at all the things that happen in the church. Sometimes members, they job transform. They move to another state, another city, or they go to another church. Or those that are faithful in your ministry, sometimes they pass away. They're deceased. All these type of things happen when it comes to church. There's some people that are in your church. They're working. Some that are not working. Some that come. And so there's a lot going on. Some that their job is requiring them to work on Sundays. Now they got to work Sundays. They can't make Sunday service no matter which time you have service. 8, 10, 11, it doesn't matter. They're at work. And so if you don't have Sunday evening service or Sunday night service, they can't make it. Some of them can't make Tuesday night a Bible study because of the mere fact that they're working, or they can't. So it's a lot going on that deals with the numbers of what we're dealing with. And so I wanted to come on and talk about this because a lot of times we put ourselves under a lot of pressure trying to get to the number thing with everyone else so we can be impressive, instead of just working and building our ministry one memory at a time. Okay? So we got a lot that we need to do. So there's a shift. I mean, come on, Pastor Gallen. Yes, a shift going on. It's just a shift going on, and things are happening, and doing things of what's going on. We got to understand the church has changed a whole lot. Things that, we had a different mindset when we were in church. When we were in church, our mindset, we would come from revival and go straight to church on Sunday morning. We would be dressed, get off the plane and go to church. That's not what people's mindset are now. And I know that we want to make excuses saying, well, people just don't want to go to church. Listen, if we preach what we believe, the Bible lets us know that in the latter times that these things would come. People would be lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. It also let us know that, these things would take place and happen. And so we shouldn't really be going through no changes because we understand that these things will take place. Mind you, some of the stuff that's happening in church, we have brought it to the forefront on ourselves because of the way we've conducted ourselves. But at the end of the day, people they're not just not going to church, they're not going to businesses. That's why you got places closing down, because folk don't shop there anymore. Online shopping has become the thing of the day. And I saw somebody mention something about social media. So social media is become also the thing of the day, or streaming. It in one instance is great, and then another thing is not great. Let's just be honest. Let's be honest. Let's talk about this. I'm gonna see how many people would say amen to what I'm getting ready to say. How many have went to the convocation or a convention, and they were live streaming, and when you were there in the city, you actually didn't go to the service, but you actually looked at the service on your phone while you in your hotel room? Okay, I'm gonna see if anybody's gonna help me out with that. See, will anybody say amen to that? I'm guilty, and I'm sure you are too. We've done those things where we've where we've went in and we've like, okay, uh, I'm not going tonight, but you watch the whole service and be right in your hotel room or whatever. I remember one time somebody preached in one of the meetings, and I told them everything they preached. I said, "Oh, I enjoyed you last night." They didn't know if I was in the service. They didn't know. I was in my hotel room. I watched the whole thing right there on the phone. So that has hurt us a little bit. Sometimes we got members that say, "I ain't going today because we streaming," and they will go and give electronically and everything and don't come to service. So sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. It just all depends on how you really look at it and how people sort of look at it. So we got a lot that's going on when we come to this church thing. And like I said, understand, because I don't want y'all to get bent out of shape, because I know church people get a little touchy. I don't know what it is about you all to get a little touchy. Where your feelings on your shoulders, I don't get it. But let me just say to you, this has nothing to do with whether the church is big or small, has nothing to do. I'm not against mega churches at all. I got pastors and friends that pastor mega churches, and I go preach for them. Thank God. I've got church people that got medium-sized churches. Then I got people that have small churches, and I go preach for them. I go preach for people that I often tell people can't afford, really can't afford you. I had a call the other week. Someone asked, "Would you come and speak for me?" And I said, yes. And they said, "Well, how much do we need to give you?" I said, "Well, I don't know what, just be fair." And they quoted an amount. And I said, "That's fine." So I'm going to preach for them. And the person that I'm going to preach for, they actually got a TV show that comes on every week. And they had me to come on their show. And that's a small church. They don't have the big church, but they're on TV that goes not only in the local area, but goes around the world. And so you got to understand, just because a person may have a smaller place, don't mean that they're not being effective from where they are. And I want you to get that. You need to understand that. I've said this to you before. When you look at and if you're doing especially media part, when you look at the shows that were on, Steve Harvey or whoever, and the Oprah Winfrey Show, all those shows, they never built the studio to house a lot of people. They never built it to house 3,000 people. You don't see them with a studio that seats 10,000 people. They don't build it for that. They build it for reaching beyond the studio. So there may be 200 people in the audience, if that many, and they're taping their show. And when they're taping their show goes out. There may be 200 people in the audience, but maybe 10 million people watching on TV. There may be many of you watching here right now may be watching here. And because this will replay, because people get to share it, please share this with somebody, because people will get to share it and stuff. Guess what? Other people will be watching this probably down the line, it may be 6 months from now, somebody can still watch this. So that means I'm still being effective 6 months from today, which is August 28th. That means in 2020, I'll still be being effective. So what you have to understand is don't let nobody go to talking you out of stuff. Now, if you feel that, the Lord is leading you to merge with somebody, then by all means do that. But if you know he called you and that's what you're supposed to be doing, and he didn't tell you to do that, keep working what you're doing. Keep ministering to the people that God allows to come in those doors. Because at the end of the day, it's not about how many people we got. And I want to say this because we got it mixed up. Because I'd rather have people come in to those doors and be delivered, be set free from drugs, from alcohol, see marriages put back together. I'd rather see that. I had a couple that was they were not just discussing it. They were already in the lawyer's office. They were already getting ready to go before the judge. Already getting ready to do that thing. It was getting ready to happen. It was going down. And they were in service one Sunday. And my wife began to sing. This is why we sing this song every Sunday at our church. That's sort of like our opening song before I preach. She began to sing, "For your goodness and your mercy toward us, we offer praise." And the Lord came in that song. And the young man they were in the midst of get ready to go to mediations, to get divorced and everything, came to my office after service and said, "Pastor, something happened to me today. That song touched me. God ministered to me." And he said, I'm going to call, and he counseled everything concerning that lawyer and divorce and everything. And they are a thriving couple today. Now, what if I had the mentality like others? Well, this is a small church and ain't nothing happening here and you ain't got a lot of people. What if I'd had that mentality? But just for that couple to be saved, just for lives to be changed, is worth more than all this other stuff. We got to check our callings. We got to check our motives. We got to stop doing an abandonment on church and ministry because we don't think it's moving fast enough for us. God never told you he's going to be overnight like somebody else. And you don't know why they went overnight. But he never told you he's going to make yours going to blow up overnight. He never told you it's going to blow up over 2 years, 3 years. You don't know. You never know what is going to happen. You'll be like one of the late pastors in Chicago, didn't have a choir and was building a church and trying to work it. And something happened and the whole choir came one Sunday and joined her church, and that became her choir. You never know who God's going to send. What we really need to start concentrating on is taking it to the street. That old Doobie Brother thing, take it to the street. we got to take it to the street. That's where we got to go. Take it to the street. Stop worrying about the transfer. A lot of times what we're looking at is just transfer. I'm going to say this, and I was thinking about this. My late brother-in-law was a great teacher. He trained us well. He trained us, Bishop Pace. He trained us well in preaching. He trained us well in praise. He trained us well in giving. He trained us well. When I say he thoroughly trained us, anybody that came from Powerhouse was trained. We knew how to carry a service. We were praisers. We know how to do it all. We knew it. And some are still functioning, moving today, and in other areas, and some in other reformations. We knew how to do that thing because he trained us and taught us. But let me say to you, anybody that left Powerhouse and went to another church, that pastor was glad because he didn't have to train nobody because we were already trained. A lot of times when people are starting new ministries and they moving and doing them in hotels and other places, people come in and even when people come in that are not have never been in church, they've got to be mentored and trained to know how to do ministry and things. But sometimes when you get transfers, those people already know they don't have to, they go through the new members class or whatever, but they already know how to do stuff. So we've got to understand it takes a little longer when you're trying to, when people are coming in that's never been saved, and you got to teach them the scripture, teach them the Bible, teach them the ways of God, the things of God. It takes a little longer, and so we've got to do a little bit more than that in training. Let me say to you again before I close, people go where they want to go. I've got friends that are having church in school auditoriums. They have to break down every Sunday, put it up and break it down, and they got a crowd of people every Sunday sitting up there in service, praising and giving God glory. Got people that are having church in hotels, but people are coming to the hotel because people know where they're growing. They know when they're getting fed and what they're getting. So my purpose for this is to answer the question, in my opinion, should there be merger on some? Possibly. But should we let that be the conversation? No. Conversation should be making sure you're called to do it in the first place, making sure your motives are right. And then if that's the case, stick to it. Get out and do it. Some of you are giving up too quick. I remember telling you the story about the man that was mining for gold. And he just got discouraged and said, I can't do it. And so he sold the gold mine. Said, I've been just doing this thing for gold. I ain't getting no gold. Ain't no gold coming. And so he sold the gold mine. And the person that bought the mine went into the gold mine 1 yard and discovered gold. And the man gave up too quick. Some of you, I know it's been a struggle. I know it's been hard. I see my friend Pastor Gatlin on here, and we were talking about small churches. Did you not know that it is a fact that the average church in America has anywhere between 75 to 100 members? That's the average that they carry on Sunday morning. And there's some exceptions of big churches, but everyone just don't have a big church. That's just the facts. Those are the polls. Those are the numbers. Those are the numbers that have come back. And so that's just a fact. So we got to deal with that. Do we have the potential for everyone to have big numbers? Sure. People are not saved. Business is picking up every day. People are out in the street. We just got to go out there and witness to them. And we always talk about people don't want to go to church. How do we know? We ain't witnessing nobody, so how do we know they don't want to come to church? You never know if they want to come to church or not. We've stopped witnessing, so that's why people are not coming. We got to witness. We got to tell people, and you never know what people will do. Well, I pray and trust that you got something from this today. I pray and trust that this has helped you, that it has helped you in any kind of way today, and pray that it'll be a blessing to you. I see you. I see your comments. I see you, Pastor Porter. Seeing Bishop Felton Smith on here. I see you, April, my cousin. And let me see. I saw someone else. Okay. Yes. I see you. I see you. I see you. Thank y'all so much for tuning in today. Let me leave this word of encouragement with you. Let me sort of tell you my journey real quick, and then I'm going to pray. I was an evangelist. I was doing quite well on the field. I really was. I was full-time, and I was on the field, and I'd never forget, I was in Florida, in Lake Placid, Florida, in revival, and the pastor had been on a 21-day fast. And that was in January that year. And I think that was 90, if I'm not mistaken, it was 97. I was running revival for him in January. And he said to me, he said, Boyd, he called me Boyd. He said, boy, the Lord's getting ready to put you in the church. You're getting ready to pastor. And I remember saying to him, and I wasn't playing. I said, Pastor, I know you've been on this 21-day fast and you've been in that closet. You need to go back in that closet because you have heard the wrong thing, because that's not about to happen. I'm telling you what I told him. I said, Pastor, I'm not finna pastor nobody's church. Oh no, that ain't. I know you ain't heard God on that one. And he just laughed and said, all right. He just laughed and said, okay. And went on about his business. Well, that was January. Then we had a revival at our church. And we had the late prophet Floyd Brown was at our church. And him and his wife was ministering at our church. And she was just standing there looking at me one night as the praise was going forth. And I'm like, why in the world is Sister Brown looking at me like that? And she's just looking and looking. I'm like, what in the world? And guess what? She's sitting there looking at me. And so she walks up to me. She said, the Lord just showed me something. And I said, well, what did he show you? She said, I saw 2 doors. She said, I saw dual doors. I saw you as an evangelist and I saw you as a pastor. And I said, ma'am, she said, you're getting ready to pastor the church. And I'm looking at like, Lord, these people done heard from God before, but this time they missing it. Then I was running revival for Bishop G.E. Patterson. This was in this same between January and March. And so I'm running revival for him. And he said to me, he said, have you ever thought about pastoring? I said, no, Bishop, it's not on my mind. He said, well, don't be surprised if you end up with a church real soon. And I was like, really? He said, yeah. He said, I got a feeling that your bishop is going to offer you a church. And I was like, okay. So I came home, and I'm going to tell you what happened. They had a 3-night consecration going on down in Columbus, Georgia, at Pastor Rogers' church. And Bishop Chandler Owens, my bishop, was there. And one of the pastors had died in March. And so they were preparing. Bishop was looking for somebody to place in the church. And I wasn't running. I had never even been to the church, actually. I didn't even know where it was located. I knew the pastor, but I'd never been to his church. And one night we were sitting there and we went out to eat. And the Lord put an urgency in my spirit about 6 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock. Said, get dressed and go to that service tonight. And I said, I got to go, y'all. And I left my family there. I went and got in the car, went home, got dressed, drove to Columbus, didn't know where I was going. I got lost. I got to the service right at the end of service. I was at the end of service. I didn't even hear the message or nothing. I was at the end of service. When I went to speak to the bishop said to, the bishop began to talk, and the bishop began to say that he said to my bishop now, Bishop Hopper, he said, didn't you tell me that we needed somebody for that church? He said, yeah. He said, well, what's wrong with Martin here? And he said, well, Martin, he'll be a good person. He said, well, son, I'll be back. I got to go to California, but I'll be back, and I'm going to put you in that church. And so right away, my heart go to beating fast because I'm like, okay, Lord, what are you doing? What in the world is going on? And so eventually what happened was within 2 weeks, on a Tuesday night, he told me to meet him at the church. He walked in, appointed me to that church, left me there, and I've been there 22 years. Did not plan on doing it, was not on my schedule or my agenda to be nobody's pastor. But when the Lord says to do it, and there've been some times I feel like all of you, maybe I should have gave this up, oh Lord. But when it's the call of God, and when God has called you to do something, you have to do what he's called you to do. And so I say to you today, hang in there, be encouraged. It'll get better. Things will work out. And always remember, it's more about the call than about the other things. It's about people's life being changed. One of the greatest things can happen to me is when I'm gone, someone can say, because of something he said, or a message he preached, or the prayer he prayed, that my life was changed or something happened. That's the greatest testimony we could have about our ministries. Not just that we left stuff, because I'm not trying to be funny, because a lot of people that's bragging about stuff, they're enjoying stuff that they did not build. They didn't build it. Somebody else built it. You just happened to come in and be placed or appointed there, but you didn't build it. And so you can't look down on other folk, because some people that's got it now, if you go back and talk to them where they were not able to do the things they're doing now, but they walked into a situation that was good, but they didn't build it. Somebody else built it, and now they're enjoying the benefits and reaping the benefits of what was built. Let's pray. Father, I thank you and I praise you today for those that are watching. I thank you and praise you for those that are here. I pray that you would touch. I pray that you would bless. I pray that you would move, God, and I pray that you would have your way. God, there's somebody right now, God, that's in ministry that feels like giving up. God, whether they're pastoring a big church, a small church, does not matter. They just feel the pressure of ministry on them. And I pray now in the name of Jesus that you would touch them, lay hands on them. I pray that you would move and lift them and stir them to a place, God, that they will get a new energy, a new fire, a new zeal, get something that will stir in their spirit, God, to cause restoration to come to them, that they will begin to do the work of ministry and do those things that you've called them to do. God, help us to prioritize where we should be and what we should be doing. Help us to prioritize ministry in the area, God, of our calling. Help us to make sure our motives are correct. Our motives are right, that we can do that you've called us to do. Give us a fresh wind, a fresh anointing. Breathe on us. I pray for every church, God, whether small, whether medium, whether mega. I pray that you would touch, God, and cause a shift in the spirit to come. God, I pray that those that will come from the north, south, east, and west, I pray, God, and we call souls in even now. God, not for the purpose of having numbers, but God, that we will make disciples and cause those to go out and win souls for you. I thank you that it's being done. You're touching now. God, I thank you for encouraging that leader, that pastor that called me the other week. Encourage his heart. God, give him a sign. Let him know that you're with him. God, I pray that you touch right now. Let the glory and the anointing of God be fresh and be great. God, I pray, God, that even this week, God, those in churches, give them a fresh wind. Let revival break out in services. Let revival, hey, God, the Spirit of God minister to those that come. Everyone that walk through our doors, let them experience your glory, not our flesh, but let them experience your glory and touch them by your power, and let it be done. And we'll give your name glory, and we'll give your name honor and praise. In Jesus' name we pray. Thank God. Amen. Well, I pray and trust that you have received today. I pray and trust that you are blessed of God and God has touched you, and that great things are happening for you. And I just believe God that it's going to be done. I believe God that great things are going to take place. I want you to do me a favor, share this with somebody. I know we've had the first part, we had a little difficulty, but I pray that people will get this, and let's share this today, that someone can get this, someone will be encouraged by it. And no matter what size church you have, let's do the work of God. And just remember, if we're not ministering to people, and people are not the main thing in our focus, if lives are not being changed, then it does not matter what size church we have. We have missed the whole point if we are not doing what God has called us to do. Thank you so much for joining me. I pray and trust, and I appreciate each and every one of you for being with me today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I thank you, I thank you, I thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. Let me answer one of these. Let's see. Someone said some churches only have 10 to 20 members, and there may be 6 churches within 10 miles. Again, I answer that by saying this. Well, let me close by saying this. Let me just say this. If they got 10 or if they got 20, if those 10 people choose to go to that church, if those 20 people choose to go to that church every week, who are we to tell them they can't go there? That's their choice. That's where they choose to go. That's where they feel comfortable. They feel they're growing. They feel they're being ministered to. Who are we to say they can't go there? That's the church saying that. But the people go where they want to go. They don't care if it's 10. They don't care if it's 20, 15, 50. They go where they want to go. Let's stop acting like people are not intelligent enough to make a choice of where they want to go. I'm going to say that again. Let's stop acting like people are not intelligent enough to make a choice of where they want to go. That's an insult to people's intelligence, because you're trying to tell them you're not intelligent enough. You need to come over here to the big church, or you need to come over here to this church. People go where they want to go. And if they want to go to the big church or go to your church with a whole bunch of people, they can go there. But stop insulting people's intelligence by telling them where they need to go and telling them that there's not enough people for them to go there. If that's what they want to do, let them do it. That's my take on that. All right, y'all. I'm getting out of here. I got to go before I really get in trouble. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you. I look forward to you being with me again next Wednesday. And in the month of September, we're going to try to change this time up. I may start doing it at 12 noon. Maybe I get some feedback. Y'all help me. If 12 noon or 3 p.m. is better, real quick, give me a shout. 12 noon or 3 p.m. for Let's Talk Ministry on Wednesday. Which works better for you? 12 noon, 3 p.m. Just give me 30 seconds and put it down there and let me hear it. 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 Let me see. Let me see. Let me see. Come on, somebody. Let me see. 12 noon, 3 p.m. What works better? Somebody said both. I don't want to be on that much. I may have a lot to say, but I don't know if I want to say that much. 12 noon. Somebody said 12 noon. 12 noon. All right. Next month, we're going to look to, somebody say 3. I'm just going to have to do this thing. I may have to do a part 1 and part 2. Who knows? But I need to get this message out. Again, share this with somebody, y'all. Thank you for joining me. 12 noon. Well, I'm going to work on it, and we're going to get this time thing right, because I want to share with you. I pray and trust you with blessed day. I didn't mean to stay on this. I've been on an hour. I didn't mean to stay on that long, y'all. I didn't. I really didn't. I was thinking 30 minutes at the max, but I pray and trust you got something out of this today. May God bless you. Thank you, Sister Hall. May God bless you, and may all God's best be yours. Remember, pastors, your best days are in front of you and not behind.
Thanks for joining Pastor Martin. Visit us at www.dlmartin.org or email us at rrcdmartin@gmail.com.